Good evening, one and all, and welcome to our session on assessments. So here we are today on Diwali. Just before Diwali, we thought of putting all of us in this group that what is assessment. And so to start with, we will, why are we having this webinar on assessment? So first is like, I was just trying to figure out, so the idea which came was the word assess comes with the Latin verb, that is assidia, meaning to sit with. In assessment, one is supposed to sit with the learner. So to sit with the learner, we thought that we should be sitting with all these learned people to learn ourselves that how post corona, how assessment should be done. So assessment is the engine which is also driving all the students of their learning. I came with a metaphor which I read that the cook tastes the soup. When the cook tastes the soup, that's formative assessment, and when the customer tastes the soup, that's summative assessment. So I'm sure with people who are around us, they will be coming up with more such metaphors and assessment techniques, which we are waiting to hear. To start with our eminent panelists who are on board, starting with Mac. Mac is founder of Oxloop, and he is the brain behind to start this assessment webinar. He asked us that why don't we do a webinar on just assessment and focusing only on assessments. So he'll share a lot of ideas which he feels should be incorporated in today's assessments. We have with us Mr. Anit Arora. So I'll cut down because to speak about them, it's volume. So just the key points are, he's a seasoned professional with 25 years of experience, CBSE, CIE curriculum, Cambridge International, Dasua. He heads this school in Dasua, which I have visited a few times, and interacting with him, I know that how passionate he is about his school. And a place like Dasua becomes like Bangalore when you visit under his guidance. So thank you, Anitji. Thank you, Mac, for joining us. And again, it has been number one, number two. So all number one, number two goes without saying that all these people are 1 and 2 principals. So nobody is 3 here. He's got prestigious CBSE award, IGCSE, AS level awards. Many children from his school have cleared for JEE and all. With that, we move to Arijit. Arijit is, what should I speak? For all those who know Arijit, we call him the pocket encyclopedia of knowledge. So, Arijit is anything which I don't know, we go to him that please tell us what is it. We don't have to see that any dictionary. With K-12 domain experience for decades, now 2 decades, having started with his career with Pearson's and working with British Council for 8 years. Currently, he is heading the position as Vice President for EQFI for school audit. Coming to Ajay ji, then Ajay Singh is also again, everyone, their profile itself is very heavy. So Ajay currently is heading the prestigious school PPS Nabha. Before that, Ajay was headmaster. He's headmaster at PPS Nabha. Reverse care, if I go to, he was Genesis, CBSE principal. He was IGCSE coordinator. I put the 3rd gear, then he goes to Mayo College. He's a psychology super specialist. And above all these people who are today on board are passionate educators. To sum it all, and another very passionate educator we are waiting is restarting my laptop, and she's just joining with the link. Rakhi, just add her, so we will add her. And then so she's again one of those passionate educator who we would like to hear what she has to say. So even Rakhi, by the time she's joining, I think you can take on and we can start with our first round. Thank you so much. Thank you. And welcome to our webinar once again.
Thank you, Sapna ma'am. Thank you so much. And good evening and warm welcome to all our panelists today. And as we all know, we are going to be discussing about assessments and assessments which are going to be changing as per the new education policy. because the new education policy brings in a lot of hope for all of us and also for all those who are managing schools. And when we talk about assessment, we need to mention PISA, which is the Program for International Student Assessment. We are aware that India had backed out from being ranked in PISA for quite a lot of time, right from 2009. But now India wants to get back, and India has recently announced that in 2021 it will be rejoining the PISA, which tests performances of 15-year-old school children in math, science, and reading. I think this itself speaks volume about what the new education policy is going to be bringing in and the reforms that it's going to be bringing in, along with what we are looking forward to in terms of assessment. Gone are the days of rote learning, and let us all embrace technology and look at assessment from a different perspective. So, with this, I would, since we are talking about technology, we are talking about assessment, I would like to invite McEnroe, who's the founder of Oxloop, to actually let us know how is technology evolving, especially for schools when it comes to assessment, considering that you have a platform which caters to schools to perform seamless, summative, and formative assessments. Over to you, McEnroe. You're on mute. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, thanks, Rocky and Sapna, for the brief introduction and in actually taking up this particular webinar with such elite panelists. Hearing about their, you can say, a very short or brief this thing profile. I think I'm blessed to have them as my co-panelist, and it will be great to hear from them. Now, coming to your question as to where the technology is going to be used in this particular manner, the education is moving. Well, just to take 20 years back, smart class was not the way which I used to learn. I break education into broadly two systems. One is learning and one is assessment. One of the co-panelists had told that we are only focused on learnings of assessments of learnings. And I think it's absolutely right. Assessment of learning is one side and you have to get it assessed. So in last 20 years, as I see, the learnings have just taken up, the technology has just taken up in learning side to an absolutely different level. Today, when I go to the schools, whether my school or even my daughter's school, absolutely when I enter, the learnings is absolutely tech heavy. Now with the advent of COVID, it has gone to a separate level of online education. Even the schools are online. So whatever said and done, the technology has taken place on the learning side. But when it comes to assessment, it's very difficult to actually break down the assessment to a from physical to online or even technology-based products. But as I see the way things have moved on, not only last 8 months, but last 5 years, things are changing. And I see a lot of tech products which can have ultimately a great impact. And schools, private institutes have started using it. I can see I started 3 years back. And with the first one itself, they started using something like, my platform where subjective exams can be evaluated on a platform, completely seamless. So they were completely intrigued by the way which we built our platform. And now I think with this, the way COVID has impacted the learning system, the education system, things have changed completely. And I see a lot of schools are taking up. Now, when it comes to NEP, NEP, when I went through NEP, when it came somewhere in September, I thought it may impact us, the way things are going. But, there is no way NEP can be implemented without technology in place. Just to give a couple of lines which NEP says that, there has to be a continuous evaluation or an assessment of a student, and not a summative way, but a formative way. Now, when it comes to such type of assessment, it is a continuous and ongoing process. It's not that one-time process. So a student has to be evaluated at every step. So no way such it can be done manually. There has to be some user-friendly tech backup, whether online or offline, to actually give some sort of scoring or some sort of grading systems to the student, and it has to be somewhere stored so that at the end of the entire academic year of a student, his entire, you can say, the way the student has performed, not only in terms of getting scores, but different aspects like critical thinking, be it analytical thinking, application of the knowledge, conceptual thinking. So those parameters has to be, assessed, and the scoring will be done on that way. So we see our platform evolving to that manner for ultimate education system. That's what I believe the way things will move. Now, going to some other points of what has been mentioned in NEP is self-assessment as well as peer analysis, peer assessment as well as the school assessment. So school assessment can be done with probably can be done manually, but then when it comes to self-assessment as well as having such a threefold, or you can say triangular way of assessment, be it peer, be it self, you need to have some system where it has to be done through a technology. I will not say that technology is going to substitute it. Ultimately, there is only one assessor, which is the teacher. But then there has to be an enabling tool to do all these things. And I see some products like, or edutech products like Oxloop will be very good tools for a lot of such educators. And apart from that, a lot of people will have concerns as to how, whether the technology will be user friendly, or how it has to be rolled out in such a large volume in terms of schooling systems. But it is nothing difficult. It has happened just in last 8 months. The way teachers have accepted online education, and the way the parents have accepted their students to get into online, I don't see any problem now going forward for such type of tools being implemented in schooling systems. So I'm pretty much upbeat about technology's role in assessment as well, and I will be looking forward to hear the views of my co-panelists who are actually more than, you can say, 2 decades in this industry, whereas I am just a recent one. But I would like to hear from my co-panelists a lot on how they see the future of assessment in the schooling system or education system of the students.
Yep. Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Macandrew, for bringing in this insight as to how schools have revamped their assessment system with the use of technology. And despite we both seen in the last 8 months how teachers have embraced technology, how schools have adapted to these recent changes. But the main question that lies over here is that when we are catering to the learner in the classroom, every learner acquires knowledge at a different pace. The way I am learning is different than the way you are learning, and so is it for everyone. In this case, this is my perspective, of course. In this case, is our system, our assessment system, foolproof enough to take care of different learners in the classroom, especially when it comes to the gifted learner? And this question is for Ajay sir. If you could please be put yourself on unmute and let us know that how our assessment system today is foolproof enough to take care of different learners. Because on one hand, we are focusing on differentiated learning, and on the other hand, we are forcing them to take the standardized test procedures. So would like to know your views about the same.
Thank you, Raki, and good evening to all my fellow panelists. Great to be here. So the system as it has been proposed right now for understanding assessment, assessment is, I think, the most powerful mechanism when we look at learning, when we look at teaching, when we look at inputs and outputs and everything around it. So we have never been used to a system called diagnostic testing, which is called a pre-test kind of. If I look at an analogy, and you have a 100-meter race, so what preparations or what skills you have prior to you start the race is what we have never catered to actually. So when you talk about gifted or not so gifted children, there has not been a demarcation in that way in Indian situations specifically. So one is the involvement in diagnostic testing, so that you know that these kids have a different level of abilities. Once we have identified that, a normal classroom doesn't cater to all these different able children, whether high or whether towards the lower side. It caters to the average children in the class, average child in the class. So then the assessment for learning takes over, then assessment as learning. The entire concept has a total shift towards what we focus on. And ultimately and predominantly, it all boils down to assessment of learning again. Now there you can't differentiate between what kind of learners you are addressing. So that's where the rote learning was predominantly so popular and so effective as a churning out mechanism in India, typically. Now vis-a-vis the NEP, was the question which you have raised actually is so important, is the NEP allows this to happen now when it talks about the holistic assessment. So it's, that gives a chance to address all these three mechanisms of assessment as a learning tool by the child himself, where you're talking about self-assessment, right? Assessment for learning, where we can have the continuous formative assessment which goes on throughout the year using different mechanisms, and ultimately, some component as of learning, so that we can see the entire school setup being tested, for which Parakh has been devised. There may be differences of opinion as to what Parakh actually does, but the whole idea of Parakh, established as a national assessment tool, is to see how the schools as an institution is catering to all these sorts of assessments. So I would suggest that when we bring in the changes, keeping assessment in mind, both in terms of structural and institutional reforms, which the NEP is addressing, the curriculum, which is so huge that the teacher's focus is to finish the curriculum. Their assessment does not come upfront. Assessment comes just to finish the curriculum and to test that curriculum. The whole idea is driven by that. So if we replace it by, the important things which have been set up as 4 different stages of learning in the schooling system, foundational, you can implement a lot of things in the foundational literacy, where the basic mathematics and the basic logic will come in. So if you are able to succeed as a school, where we can, institute this mechanism through different
Okay, I think there has been some internet issue on Ajay sir's side, and he was actually talking about a very valid point where diagnostic assessment, the pre-test, the foundational skills that we need to build in our learners. Okay, we got you back, sir. Yeah.
So here, if you can bring in the component called reflection. So reflection is where the child starts, analyzing himself with a certain set of parameters which we can sit together and devise for the child. Now that requires time, that requires effort, and that requires a whole paradigm shift in the teacher's mind, which we need to institute and promote as leaders in the industry. Coming to the usage of, then you can graduate on to assessment for learning, which is a continuous mechanism, because that is what will guide your teaching process. So here you have to know which child stands where. That we are not able to do at the current moment. That is where we are losing out. We are unable to, because we run the class keeping the middle, average student in mind. So once we institute these reflection mechanisms and the testing of, diagnostic testing, then we can actually pace the class and bring in this now PI, personalized instructions, which different platforms have generated. There the child can himself pace, slow or hasten up at home, which can be monitored. And once this is linked with a good and strong feedback system, please understand, feedback system is different from marking. So the feedback will, actually tell the learner how much you have learned. I am deviating from how much he has scored. I am telling how much he has learned. And that is more important. So all these mechanisms of assessment, which can be devised to find out the level of thinking or the level of cognitive development, should be catered to. Then only we can find out this areas which you're pointing out for gifted children, for not so gifted children, and for the other children. So you can pace their learning and also carry forward the entire class. And subsequently, you can have at the end of the term as a assessment of learning, that can be there, but as a portion of the total learning process, not the learning process. So this is where we need to take forward the national educational policy which has come up, and it addresses this point emphatically, right? So I am very much hopeful about this. Yes, there has to be training for it, because at the moment the teachers need to be trained for effective feedback. They need to be trained for how to use assessment as learning, make the students have reflection as a way of learning. At the end of a unit, at the end of a chapter, let them reflect. What did they learn? How is it linked with real life? So one example which I can quote, if I have the time, is beauty as a concept is so vague and so undefinable. So I introduced the class with a picture of one of the popular heroines in the West, Angelina Jolie, and asked them, is this the most beautiful lady? And they all raised hands. It's like scenery banana hai, so you need to have the mountain and the sun and the river and the boat. We taught them, fixed them that this is a scenery. So beauty concept came in there. And then when I told them that, do you know the concept called a golden ratio? As per this golden ratio, Angelina Jolie does not even figure close to being beautiful. And then you can link it with, just take them tangential to monuments where the symmetry comes in, the golden ratio comes in, and the concept of beauty comes in. What we are doing is opening up the minds, perspectives, and this will lead to good, powerful thinking skills, which I feel in the present demand, which is Industrial Revolution 4.0, is more required than just a rote learning, which came up in the first Industrial Revolution. So to keep pace with this, our industry, education industry, has to align with the technological industry.
Wow, these were indeed wonderful insights, because when we are focusing on learning, many a times the focus of educators, falls on the assessment of learning, and that's where, because schools are focused on marks, and parents are focusing on marks, and everybody seems to be suddenly focusing on marks, especially for the high stake exams, and this also tends to educators being judged, because if you're able to produce children who are getting good marks, then you're a good teacher. So that's like a direct correlation between a good teacher and marks that the students are getting in his or her classroom. But over here, what the NEP is suggesting, and what you rightly have spoken about, is that we need to be moving from the fixed mindset to the growth mindset, and that can only happen when there is scope for reflection given. So yeah, absolutely well said. And with this, I would like to take my next question to Arijit sir, where when we are talking about that how rote learning came about a long time ago, and that was the only way we thought that children could learn. But of course, rote learning is done away with, and dozens of studies have proven that standardized tests are actually a way of distracting our learners, and it doesn't prove anything, right? It's just that they need to memorize, and then they need to vomit, and that's about it. So there are many you know uh, theories, and many companies who no longer want to actually ask for your test score. They don't want to know how well you have scored. What they want to know is your ability to learn, and how is it that you can apply that knowledge when you are working. So in such a scenario, when the whole focus is shifting from the memory skills to practical skills, from a fixed mindset to growth mindset, how are the government schools striking this balance?
Okay. Thank you, Raki, and good evening, all. It's a pleasure to be a part of this fantastic discussion along with my co-panelists. So I heard McEnroe and Mr. Ajay Singh speaking some absolutely strong, valid points. Now, before I directly address your question, Raki, I think I need to take two steps back and talk about some general myths of assessment that we all bring as our baggage, I would say. So first and foremost is we think that assessment is comes at the end of the learning process. So first you define a learning objective which the children needs to learn. Then it comes to the pedagogy which needs to be followed, and we have done fantastic advancement with regards to different types of pedagogical skills. And then we need to assess what they have learned. Now, just compare this with real life. Now, real life will not throw a problem to you stating that, okay, you have studied grade 9 physics. Now, solve this problem using your rationale of grade 9 physics into this problem. So, I think the first what we need to bring about a change into the system is break this unidirectional way of treating assessments and maybe flip it around. So flip it around in the sense is even in the classroom when you start and you are talking about the 21st century skills, the practical skills for it, start with a problem even without the background knowledge, let's say. Start with a problem and then allow students to explore. And I'm not talking about only the senior grades, it can even happen with kindergarten. Let them explore and come up with multiple solutions. Then what happens is a lot of critical thinking, which we so much talk about, that comes into the picture. Also is realizing that different people have different opinion, so that acceptability comes, working as a team, and clarity in communication, these things come. So that is one myth I think we need to break. The second one, I would say, is we think, and unfortunately the discussion till we had now even talks that assessment is only meant for students. When we talk the term assessments, we generally think that it is meant for the students. But how much of a support, and I fantastic I got to hear Mr. Ajay Singh talking about the importance of feedback. And when it is feedback for the teachers as well, that it's not only whether the teacher has succeeded in in allowing that child to score a 90% or not, that is not the point, but whether the teacher used his or her skill sets in the desired effect to transact that lesson in the class. So assessments is not only meant for students, but it is actually a cry for all stakeholders, and teachers are very much a part and parcel of that. So we need to have more data points when we are talking about assessments and the entire system. And the third, what I want to talk about is assessment is considered that it is only meant for academic progress or academic proficiency, which is again no. In the era of 21st century skills and everybody talking a lot on that, what we are still not able to grasp is how do we measure behaviors. Now when we make a some so there is one group of people who think that behaviors cannot be measured, but there is a they make a comment that Mr. A is more creative than Mr. B. Now if A is more creative than B, and this is a statement you are making, you are actually making a comparison. The moment you make a comparison, it means there is some mechanism in which you have to measure that. So I think technology here plays a huge role over here. So we were talking about rubrics. So McEnroe very in a brief manner touched upon that how do we cover that. So I think rubrics is a very strong element, and the continuous part of it, manually it's just not possible because it brings subjectivity into the system. So we need to bring about the objective manner into the entire arena of assessments, and technology needs to play a fantastic role, a very strong role, a huge pillar into this. Now, very briefly to answer your question with regards to how the government schools are coping it. Unfortunately, with my experience, still a lot of things are there with regards to standardized testing and rote learning and improvement of competencies. So when I talk about competencies, I mean academic competencies, and still the focus is primarily on improving or raising the foundational literacy and numeracy, because we all know the USR reports, what the USR reports are talking about with regards to the education system in the country. But again, there is hope, there is positivity. Some states at least are focusing on how the 21st century skills are happening. When I talked about the teachers skill sets as well, there are some states which are even going ahead and asking us, because we as a data-driven organization, we have developed a framework to assess the skill sets of teachers, which is called the teacher skill audit. So we have 5 domains on which we do this, which is learner management, which again, Mr. Singh talked about, that it is very important that the personalized or individualized learning happens. So before that, I think a precursor to that is you need to know your learners. So to answer your previous question about how do you deal with gifted children, so learner management. Our second is resource management. So talking about it's not whether there is adequate or inadequate resource, but how effectively you are using your resources which are available. Transaction of learning materials, which is basically the pedagogy. 21st century skills. So whether you are not only able to inculcate those 21st century skills amongst the learners, but whether as adults you yourself are 21st century skill ready or not. So that's the fourth one. And the fifth one is professional culture, because again, sadly, in the government school system, still teacher retention and teacher absenteeism are two big issues still in this country. So I think professional culture is something which we need to take into consideration. And I say these points with reference to the NEP, and Mr. Singh had also mentioned that in NEP there is a very strong focus on holistic assessment, which is there, and a 360-degree kind of a report card for every child. So when you are doing this, I think two things will come out very strongly. One is the importance of rubrics and across levels. So a child moving from one level to another level in a progressive manner, like what you were also talking about, that mastery in one. So like for example, immediately at the top of my mind, Khan Academy comes to my mind. That's the essence of their platform, that you yourself is your competitor, so you need to gain mastery of what you are doing. So I think rubric is one very important, and the second thing is behavioral science. So I think in future, in very recent future, more and more focus will be on behavioral science and psychology for that matter, because till now, why we assess, so that rationale of why we are assessing, that is still limited to that we assess to test the academic achievements of a student, and between 2 points, Mr. Singh talked about pre-test, and we call out the improvement hopefully. So I think if we have to redefine assessment, this canvas needs to be broadened, the boundaries need to be broadened. So we need to not only assess to reflect on the teaching styles, as I mentioned, from the teachers, but also we need to start assessing the psychological effects of assessments itself on a child. Because you started off the session with reference to PISA. Now, PISA does that, and it is not a very good picture across the world when you're talking about stress level. So the OECD average there is just 55%. 55% students say that they are stressed before an exam, and 65% students say that even if they are prepared well, they have this butterfly in the stomach that they may not perform to the desired effect. So I think as an education system, we need to address the psychological effects which we are bringing. And with this pandemic, there has been a lot of discussion on the social and emotional well-being of learners. So I think that is again another point which needs to be considered. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Harijit sir, for wonderful insights. And you very, very rightly explained that assessments is not only meant for students, and it's not only limited to academic purpose, it's also meant for educators. And in this case, I would say for educators, self-assessment becomes extremely important, because that's the teaching without reflection is of no use at all. And because we've been seeing what has been happening since the time we have started online learning. A lot of learners are losing interest. A lot of educators are not able to cope up with the whole. They're not able to connect with the learners because we all are virtual. We don't know. We're not able to see our learners. So in this case, even assessing for that matter, whether the learner is actually listening to you is also becoming really difficult. But as you rightly pointed out, that with the use of tech, and as the NEP is suggesting, that we need to make our assessments holistic, and that's what brings in the 360 report card. The holistic report card puts this into picture. So my next question is to Aneet sir, and how do you view this holistic assessment, the 360 assessment that we just discussed? How do you view this coming into schools? How do you view this in respect of educators? What is the kind of training that will be required for the educators to understand this kind of holistic assessment? Because I believe that we educators are involved in either doing assessment of learning, that is formative assessment, and then assessment for learning, which is the summative assessment. But here we are talking about a completely different skill altogether, which is holistic 360 degree assessment. So what are your views about educators being aware of this kind of assessment, and what are going to be the changes that you as a school owner or as a school principal will need to bring about?
Thank you, Rakhi, for this wonderful interaction, and thank you all the panelists for giving so much of insights. First of all, I would like to agree with each one of you what all you have stated, but I would like to take you somewhat in the backdrop of the whole things. When Arjun, Bhim, they used to study in their gurukuls. Have we ever heard that Arjun got 80% marks or Bhim got 90% of marks? Someone got 50% or someone got 70%. So we all have, educators have devised that you are 70%, you're 90%, and you're 100%. So learning was important, skill was important, marks was not important. So this concept of holistic assessment was already there into our culture. In fact, what we have done, we have cut, copy, paste from different places, and now we have made a mess out of it. Now, when we interact with a person with 90% of marks in engineering or 9 CGPA, computer science engineering graduate, you ask them to write five lines of codes, and they are not able to do it. You ask an MBA finance, what is NASDAQ, what is Nifty, what is Wall Street? They are completely unaware about this. Though they have completed their MBA in finance from a good recognized institute, which is recognized by a UGC. You asked a physics MSc, sir, what is an AC current and what is a DC current? What is the difference between voltage and current? Believe me, 90% of them are going to falter with 75% of marks. So this is the condition of assessment which we have developed. And the country took a big leap in 2009-10 when we started this concept of CCE, and why it flopped, like why we changed again and why we did. See, we need to understand that only the school changed, the industry never changed. The National Testing Agency were holding the same JEE pattern, NEET examination were being held with the same concept. Even if you go to any engineering college, during the third year or final year, let it be BITS, let it be IIT, let it be any of the best engineering college, they would say only this much number of CGPA has to appear for this interview. So they'll have a complete cutoff for that. So we talk that assessments are not important, marks are not important, but even in the capital city, until unless you get 96% of marks, you cannot get a decent college. So if we actually want to change assessment, if we have got a mindset that we need to change assessment, then the whole system has to change. The system of the school, the system of college, the system of National Testing Agency, the system of the jobs which we are going to give. So the whole concept has to change. Now, changing school or changing somehow things in the college would only be half-baked things. So those half-baked things is neither going to help any one of us. whether we do it on computer. See, I'm an engineering graduate. I did my engineering in computer science, and it was a love marriage to this profession. I came into this profession by choice, and each day is a day of learning. I enjoy my vocation. So after completing my engineering, when I gave a thought that I did my computer science engineering, so uh, my only takeaway was that it strengthened my brain muscles. Like I was able to do problem solving in much more better way. So in my view, I may be right, I may be wrong, that the concept of education is to strengthen your brain muscles so that you can take up any challenges, any work, whether you have core competence of it, whether you don't have core competence of it, and you can do it in much more better way. Now, understanding the PISA, why we don't do well in PISA, the reason is because we study for assessment, we teach for assessment, we don't teach for learning. The day one the child enters the school, the first question of the parent is school में toppers आते हैं कि नहीं आते हैं? How many toppers this school are going to produce? Even as parents, we would like to admit our children to that school which are producing district toppers, state toppers, national toppers. So everybody is looking after marks, assessment, not learning. PISA will do very well until unless we should have learning. Then the education policy, new education policy has got a very 360-degree beautiful thing where the peer assessment, the parents assessment, the parent also have to give the assessment, the school has to give the assessment, the teacher has to give the assessment. It is a beautiful thing if it is done properly. And as Menro sir has said, that the computers would be needed, the software would be needed to record that. Without that, it won't be possible. Now, coming my idea for assessment, now this concept, we say that a child goes from grade 6 to grade 7, and then grade 7 to grade 8, grade 8 to grade 9. This has to change fundamentally. Maybe it's a very wild thought, but since you all are very much experienced, I think you'll be able to understand what I'm trying to say. Now, see, I'm studying in grade 6. Maybe I have developed some proficiency in mathematics, but I was not able to develop some proficiency in languages. So I should be allowed to study mathematics of the next level, whereas I need to continue with my languages for the previous level. So we cannot fit everyone into the same box that, okay, now you have moved from grade 6 to grade 7. Now the child moves from grade 6 to grade 7. The child is good into maths, the child is good into science, but they are not good into languages. Though they have not performed well in the languages, still they are promoted to the next class, and the backlog and the gap is never filled. So that gap actually increases. So if we should allow them to keep terms with the old class. Now, suppose if I am grade 7, I can learn advanced math 7, but I have to learn elementary languages, which I was not able to understand, or which I was not able to do. In this, different software techniques, different ways of analyzing how the child has performed, where were the gaps. We could even do micro analysis of every student assessment, which could give an insight that which level the child has to be. Though the child is into a different class, maybe they need to study something from the previous class which they have not understood. So that could also give us the kind of differential learning which we were talking about, the differentiation which we need to have. So I think that this is something we all need to think, that assessment has created quite a lot of fear in the mind of the parents. Everybody is afraid of examination, and we talk about that we are a child-centric school, we are a student-centric school, but believe me, though these are very strong words, but most of the schools are either parent-centric or promoter-centric. Very few schools are actually child-centric. So we need to understand that it has to be absolutely child-centric if we need to actually help the child to understand what all capabilities they are blessed with, and how we need to help them to enhance those capabilities. Next thing which we need to understand in our school system is that the teachers come with a very strong mindset, and they teach in the same format as they were taught in schools, as they were teaching in schools, as they were taught in schools. So the complete mindset has to be changed. The complete system has to be changed. In fact, if you take my call, till grade 5, we should not have any kind of assessment. Assessment is not required till grade 5, grade 6. And this is the reason that we all are product of fear. We never studied because we wanted to study. We studied because of fear of assessment, fear of parents, fear of society, fear of quite a lot of things. We never studied because we actually wanted to study. And assessment was the main reason we never enjoyed studying. So I think, I don't know whether you agree with me or not, but this is something which I personally feel that it was assessment and the fear which was driving Indian education for quite a long time. Now, if I see myself 20 years back, 30 years back, so it was fear of examination, fear of assessment, which motivated us to study. It was not the learning which motivated us. So if we actually need to bring that change into any system, let every child enjoy coming to school. They should not have any fear of assessment, and the school should give them ample of opportunities where they could choose from a different domain. They should have quite a lot of domain to choose the subjects which they like. They could take elementary maths, they could take elementary languages, they can study advanced depending upon their skills. So as Mr. Ajay said, that a complete mapping has to be done, psychometric test has to be done, some support has to be given, diagnostics have to be done to understand that how those child can be fit into. So I think the big shift which we need to create is remove fear from the system. We can only perform well in PISA if we remove fear from the system. And that fear has to be removed from parents, teachers, students, from principals, and from everyone. Today, every principal, whether you are a principal of the biggest school or some big school or a small school, they are afraid when the results are coming. They get sleepless nights. I see Mr. Ajay laughing and enjoying this. So I believe that the principals are like really afraid that how their students are going to perform, because it is their stake, and it is their stake which is actually like the people are going to check that how the school has performed, and the principal has to take complete accountability of it. So I think I'm still afraid of assessment, because I'm assessed every year. Every after 1 year, when I get board results, I feel the same kind of goosebumps which I used to face when I was in grade 10 and grade 12. So I think this has to change. This has to change. We don't celebrate success in some other way. Now, have we seen any school coming up with a kind of a photograph of a child on a big hoarding that this boy or this girl is one of the most disciplined, obedient, responsible child? No, we come up 90%. NEET selection, JE selection, IIT selection, BIT selection. We don't celebrate success of in some other way. So our mindset have to change. The promoters' mindset has to change. The everyone's mindset has to change. The industry mindset has to change. Now we talk about Wipro, we talk about Google, we talk about Apple, we talk about Accenture, we talk about Deloitte. The moment they go to any college, first thing is only 8 CGP and above will come for the interview, and this much number of branches will come for an interview. So if the whole industry mindset is like this, how the assessment is going to change? Man, everybody will focus on rote learning. Everybody will focus on getting more marks. Everybody will focus on trying to get maximum out of it. Nobody will focus on understanding. Nobody will focus on learning. Nobody will focus that what they are good at. So this is something like I have expressed, and believe me, we all can contribute a lot into this, and there is something which we all need to do. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, Sapna Madam, for allowing me to part of this panel, and I really enjoyed interacting with all of you. Thank you.
Yep. No, absolutely, sir. Stay there,
Few
and
more
we
questions.
still have, one more question coming up, which
Raki,
Sapna ma'am will
can
be
we
addressing, of course. So, as you rightly
allow
pointed out,
Neeta to enter,
yeah,
because Neeta has been waiting.
it's not
Once
being
you
shown,
leave,
ma'am.
that
I
just
can't
ask
see
her
her.
to enter because she's been calling me up. Hmm.
Sure, I'll do that. Yes. So, as rightly said by Amit Arora, sir, that if we need the assessment to change, we need the whole system to change, the entire school, college, the national testing agencies, everything needs to be changed. Otherwise, it's almost like a half baked product that we are letting out in our system. And with this wonderful, insightful discussion that we are having, please stay tuned as now I give my stance to Sapna ma'am. And over to you, Sapna ma'am, to probably be concluding on this wonderful session that we have had and put forward your questions to all our panelists. Thank you, everyone.
So thank you so much, Raki. And listening to all these esteemed people, I have a question which anybody can answer now, because since you are principal of prestigious schools, so coming from a trainer's perspective, whenever we ask for training or whenever we ask that teachers do need training or the children need to go for other assessments or um, multiple activities, so the answer which the school gives is that madam, now the tests are going on, exams are going on. That goes with every school. That exams, we are talking about that we should not pay emphasis to exams. We should pay emphasis to assessment, which is continuous assessment and not evaluating the child. How do you think that as leaders of school and as EQFI trainer, how do you think that, I want to know, like, how do you allow your children to be themselves? Because we as leaders put so much of pressure about us exams all the time, that whenever the school has to do something, it's all about exams. We hear a lot. So is it to do like something, you will be creating a rubric about that, assessing throughout the year and not evaluating them as per just exam based? Or what's your take on that? Anyone can answer this. Who would like to answer? Ajay, yeah. Yeah.
If I may, uh, so what we have been talking around is that along with this all system of assessment, we have to deeply dive into and look into the institutional and structural framework. Now that directly translates into the amount of knowledge being tested in the name of content. Now, if the content is huge, what happens? We tend to divide it throughout the year, and that needs to be tested periodically. So, to be a rational kind of a system of education where we are looking at rationalizing the content so that there is more depth learning happening than only the vastness of learning happening. There's a difference. So we need to dive deeper into the logistics of learning in terms of uh, thinking skills, critical decision making skills, than the content per se. So this needs to be managed, and this is what has been given to NCRT also as to how the framework should be incorporated in terms of the rationalization of syllabus. This demands attention, which should be immediate. We cannot just have voluminous books to be covered. For 11th and 12th, it's huge. I'm telling you, it's huge. And we can reduce the syllabus and all these trainings we're talking about, so that we can have other forms of assessment happening, not only the academics, right? So the skills can be trained, the skill assessment can be trained. It is only possible when that framing of the entire system, especially look at the senior classes, the content has to be rationalized. So that is one demand which I have with the government, and upgradation of the content.
I think I'll just add one small point, Sapna, over here to what Mr. Singh has already said. I completely agree with him because currently in our assessment system, I think we assess what the teacher has taught and not what the student has learned. So I think that's where the problem arises. So I think more and more focus on the child, what the purpose, what I also said earlier, the purpose of assessment, I think that needs to be redefined, because there is this what should I say, insatiable hunger from teachers that we need to assess everything. That is not the point. We need to understand that in the curriculum, there are certain pieces which are absolutely necessary to know, whereas there are some points in the curriculum which are good to know. So we need to now, currently, even in the curriculum, we don't differentiate that. We tell that everything is of equal importance. So until and unless we realize that and focus more on the practical skills of students, I think this problem will persist. I completely agree with Mr. Singh there. And another point is, I think the fundamental terminology is a problem here. So when we talk about assessment, we actually mean testing. Now, testing and assessing are two different terms with completely two different meanings. Testing is just a small subset of assessing. Now, assessing is much wider, much broader in context. So, again, what I said earlier, that we need to broaden the horizon of our thinking as to what we need to do with assessments. We need to bring in reflection very strongly into our assessment discussion into this particular piece, and not only focus on test marks and obviously the
So
standardized
I was
testing.
also listening to what Anitji said. So I was listening to one of the interviews of Sugata Mitra, and where he said that why do we have to assess later? Why can't we start our classes with assessment? That you give them assessment first, and then you diagnose that where do they stand, and then you start teaching. So any of you, like, now we'll just open this, like, what do you have to say about this? Like, do you think that assessment should be done before and then test their level of intelligence, or as Anit said, that they can be grouped with different subjects, and whatever you experiences you shared. So does it go well with taking assessment before?
Absolutely, it does. It does make sense, because that's what diagnostic testing is all about. Suppose you let's take the example of teaching something called the non-cooperation movement. Now, when you bring in the topic, you can just have a questionnaire on, I mean, do you know Gandhi? Do you know India in those times? Do you know the problems of people in those times? You can just throw questions to take them back to those times. So this can at least give you a leverage into how much the child is aware about those situations. Similarly, it can happen for any topic in any subject. So once you are in the know-how of the baseline on which you can develop the lesson, so it becomes very powerful tool actually to to formulate your lesson. If the children know more, looking at the knowledge which is there on their fingertips, so if they do know something, why to waste time teaching them the same thing? Then you can go beyond and look at the critical explanations more than looking at the factual information. So this becomes a very important tool. And as we said in the discussion, that assessment, which has been misinterpreted, that it's only at the end to test how much you have learned, is not the true picture. The true picture is it should happen before, it should happen continuous CCE, and then it should be happening post learning. So pre, during, and post. It's a full process. This should be the full essence of assessment, including teachers and students.
Okay, so it should be
I
pre,
think
post, and
Sapna, just one point here. I want to acknowledge one comment which has come in the chat box from Amrita Kumari, saying that the child should choose topics of assessment and method of assessment. I completely agree with that. So what happens currently is, we see, if you have to assess a child, if you have to assess a child's learning, you can do, I would say, in three principal ways. One is what the child says, so verbal, what the child does. So it talks a lot about behavior and how the child is reacting in the class, and what the child writes. Okay. Now, currently in our education system, a lot of focus is given on what the child writes. So it's that portfolio which is there, or at the end of the term, what that child puts down on paper. That is very important. I think the mode of assessment, we need to start focusing more on what the child does and what the child says. So if we do that and design a choice, provide a choice to students with regards to the modes of assessment, like what we have done for pedagogy, because a lot of schools have done fantastic work in differentiated learning styles and the way teaching is being conducted in the class. But unfortunately, assessment hasn't seen that wide canvas or the spectrum. So thank you very much, Amrita Kumari, for
Yes,
that comment.
I would like to add one thing, and I believe that this would be a future of education, because what I believe that the kids, those who are in grade one, grade two, or maybe nursery, KG, they'll only have online assessments after 10 years, after 15 years. So we'll not have these pen and paper examination within next 10, 15 years. So once that would happen, now see, we have got a challenge that only two, three, four sets of paper can be framed. So we cannot have differentiation in making of question paper and in assessment. But once it is done online, every student can get that flexibility, because the artificial intelligence can come into picture. Quite a lot of softwares can come into picture, where we could actually check that this is the level of the child. Now that can be based on their self-paced learning, that I have completed this, I can go and take this particular test. So if there are 30 students in the class, then there can be different level of assessments for those 30 students. But that can only happen in an online system. And that is the future of learning, which would definitely happen. So that would give us the flexibility that all those 30 students would take up the same maths examination, but their level would be different based on their understanding, based on the things which they have achieved, and gradually they can move on to the next level. Though they all study in the same class, but the assessment can be conducted for different students at a different level. And believe me, within next 10 years, within next, in fact, within next 5 years, we'll have this kind of an assessment, because with artificial intelligence coming into picture, that we can always have that kind of a question bank which can cater to different set of students, and which could help them out. I think this is something we all need to look forward to, and this is going to create a revolution where every child can choose how they need to assess, which topic they need to assess. In fact, if you take my call, we should even give them the flexibility how much every child wants to get assessed. If I have prepared, say, 75% of my paper, or 30% of my total curriculum, I should be assessed for that 30% of my curriculum. So I should not be pressurized to completely mug up the 100% thing, and then do that. If I've completed 50%, I'll go and give that test. I can even increase the difficulty level of the test based upon my understanding, and that is virtually possible once with artificial intelligence and software coming into picture. And this would be the future of education and future of assessment. Thank you.
Yeah, so there we come, like what Anit said, and what Arijit said, that what the child does, what the child says, and what choices do we give him. And where Anit said that this is the future of examination, and Ajay says that yes, we should assess them beforehand. So, Mac, do you think that you will be able to develop a software where all these things which we want to give it to our students, where we don't pay so much attention to, where only learning is happening, and where do you think you'll be able to provide this kind, or your any sort of company can provide this software where rubrics can be just our work can be easier?
Yeah, see, that's a very good point, and we had been working towards this. See, when anyone says assessment, I understand one simple thing: it has to be continuous, and it cannot be examination based oriented thing. So when a software is being made or any such platform is there, like Anit said, that there has to be a difficulty level based. Every student can choose their own level of difficulty and take some sort of assessment, not an exam. See, I never put it as an exam. It should be just their self-assessment. Okay, I am at this level of, you can say, knowledge. Now, when you're talking about a platform or software to be made, which can give us a flexibility of pre and post. For me, it's like a continuous process. Let's say a student is in standard fourth, and as a panelist said that we should not be assessing them. There is no assessment. It is just that a teacher will just say that okay, he's good in maths, he's a bit okay in English, or you can just level of knowledge. The software can capture it as he goes ahead. The next teacher and the next level, they know that okay, the student is can be placed at this level of knowledge in every subject, and it is nothing to do with examination. It is just that their level of you can say the ability to learn a particular subject is assessment, in my opinion. And that's how the software has been developed. And not only us, but you can see a lot of people are developing in this way. So I see that the rubrics can be easily made, and it can be right from year one or a grade one till whatever, till the number of year he's in the school. The same thing can be taken till the end. The entire, you can say, life cycle of a student across all the parameters can be taken by the software. So yes, very much there. I don't see it's 5 years down the line. Softwares are already available. They just have to be accepted.
Good. So welcome. Thank you so much, Mac. And let's welcome Mrs. Neeta Arora. And thanks to the technology that we were all trying to figure out that how to enter and what to do. So thank you for joining us, Neeta ma'am. So Neeta Arora is principal of Sri Venkateshwara School and with 39 years of experience. Resource person for CBSE, British Council Ambassador, National Awardee, and Extempo, and so on and on. So let's come back to the point that Neeta, you've been listening to us. We would like to know from you, when Max said that this assessment can be done, it's just a few steps away, not 5 years, but just few steps away. With you sitting in Delhi with so much of, that's for everyone, but I just want to hear from Neeta first, that we want to have technology, we want to have new methods, we want our school to do the best. How will you manage this? Because everything comes with a cost. So I would like you to just highlight on this point, that how will you make this assessment as a major investment for your schools?
First of all, assessment. Why do we assess children? We assess what we want to assess. Are we allowing children to choose what they would like to be assessed in? And that is a fallacy of the system. And this is a traditional approach, what everybody else has been talking about. So I'm deviating from what you asked, because I'm coming back to unique assessments as per NEP. NEP, we're hoping that NEP will bring about changes. NEP would bring about a structural change. NEP would bring about institutional change. NEP would also try to standardize education across various states of India. And if that happens, technology is definitely going to be used. How will they do a survey of which institution is following what technique? So right now you have, say, about 60 boards, and that means the quality of education varies from one board to another. And it's not the quality of education. Basically, the education starts suffering the moment you have board exams. Till 8, children are allowed to study the way they wish to study. Teachers are allowed to innovate. Teachers are allowed to go beyond or go in detail in sub-subjects where the children are finding more interest, and skim in some. And children are allowed to have various choices. But the moment the board pressure comes in, will NEP, National Education Policy 2020, change the system? No, it is pretty traditional. Board exams are going to stay. But the only thing is the emphasis on essays are going to reduce. And there's going to be change in the report card pattern, which will be more of the best school CC pattern plus board exams. And if CC is going to stay, that means there's going to be much more data to be tackled. Much more data than an end of the year examination, and their technology is going to play a big role. One is there. Second is the universities are going to conduct entrance exam, which is a big thing for school children and for school principals like me. Because if the college admissions are based on CBSE exams, say DU and many other universities, then we are stuck with children doing well in that end of the year exam. One exam, not exam. They have to do very well, otherwise they don't get into the right college. Or they have to do well in a particular entrance exam. Now, if NTA is going to conduct a test which will become the basis for college admissions, that means the school will be free of the pressure of college admission. Because otherwise, why are the parents worried about board exams? Only because of higher education pressure. Higher education is also going to turn multidisciplinary. School education is going to give more choices in NEP as it is assessed. So there is a possibility that the assessments will become more creative, Assessments, as the word should be, for learning, of learning. And then third layer is a survey called Parak. I'll just tell you what Parak is. Parak is National Assessment Survey, Performance Assessment Review and Analysis of Knowledge for Holistic Development, and their technology. And this is not of children. Children will become anonymous here. It will be basically of the institution and the states. And as Max said, there will be a lot of data analysis. A lot of data analysis, and then one person or a group of people will not be able to do the data analysis. So technology is going to come in a big way. Now, when it comes to institutional level, you're just talking about assessment, whether online can do on-screen marking, we can make Google Forms, or we can do Kahoot testing. That everybody is doing. They're both kind of investments available. I mean, paid and unpaid version. You take a paid version, you get better technology. What is more important for assessment is teacher training. Let's start investing in teacher training. Let's start investing, and there also technology is going to be used. Let's start investing in data analysis. Arijit is working on data analysis, and he knows the importance of good data analysis that gives you. Otherwise, everybody is happy. I've got an average of 88%, 90%, 92% average result, 100% pass. Oh, my school is arrived. But are we addressing the needs of the children? A child may just score 70. I had a child who scored 63%, but she started working right after school. In fact, she started getting work during school itself because she excelled in photography. It did not matter to her or to me or to her parents whether she gets 90% in the various subjects. So you have to train teachers, you have to change the mindset of the parents, and you have to see the dreams of the children. Ultimately, it is all about children. And the dreams are more important than the marks. Marks, how many professions are there where marks are important? I wonder when Matt got 90% in his school to head an organization, or all of us got 95% to be a school principal. Otherwise, half the teachers of my school probably would leave if I start checking their school results. And in fact, I do see the school results. Believe me, for me, 10th results are very important. It just tells me that, oh yes, if you are 75%, 70%, or in my time, people like me, 60%ers are fine. Very good, because that means that you took care of your, but if you're 40% or 30%, there's something wrong, you did not pay attention. But were you good in something else? If my music teacher is just 40%, it doesn't matter to me. My dance teacher, believe me, cannot speak good English, but he's an amazing dance teacher. His computer skills are also okay, but he learned on his job. So for various vocations, you see various kind of parameters, and I think we've hogged a lot of space and time. So you can throw this question to others, Sapna, because Mac would like to know that we're going to invest in technology. Yes, we are investing in technology.
No, Anita, I think all of you have summed it up so well, whether it was, and all of us agree that marks are not that important. It's about assessing the child and individual capacity, the way he is or she is, and assessments are not so important. Evaluation comes later. Syllabus should be reduced. Now, we would like you to just give one takeaway, because NEP says till 2030 it should be implemented. It gives us a big 1 decade of implementing from state versus state. So now that all of you are from different states, one is from Maharashtra, one is from Delhi, one is from Punjab. Both of them are from Punjab. So what
we have got Nava person also here. Hello, good to see you from various parts of India. And that is why people are scared of Parak. They're thinking there could be some sort of intrusion in their space by the government. Because the moment you start standardizing boards and you start analyzing results, state-wise, institution-wise, people are worrying there will be a backdoor entry of the government into various states. And I think it is high time India has a standardized system of assessment, if not education.
So we would like Neeta to just give one statement. What is your, what do you want to tell our audience that for assessment, how they should go on? Because there are many teachers who are watching, many parents who are watching, many students who are watching you today, and maybe not today, they'll be watching the recording.
Scholastic is very small component of assessment, which is something which is the Hawa of the education system. Everybody's talking about. Scholastic is just 30% of assessment. Essays importance has been reduced in unique assessment of NEP, and I do hope by 30 this gets actually reduced further. There has to be a whole gamut of scholastic learning, the skills, right now I've just introduced in my own report card online participation, involvement in collaborative activities, feedback, and taking lead. So that also has now become a part of. So you System has to evolve. The school principals have to be not scared of the change. In fact, they must embrace change and they must bring about changes. Your assessment should change. Like blended learning, you cannot use a last year's format. How can you use it? The format is so different. You cannot have the sports and games still there unless you are actually able to manage something in your physical fitness. Yes, could stay there because children can showcase that they are actually doing something, or they can share their stories, case studies, and you can base on that. I think the assessment has to be more on case studies, projects, and schools have to become more autonomous in awarding grades in various other parameters. Essays and last exam should just have 20 to 30% weightage in the overall scheme of things. Do away with marks, give them grades, give them descriptive indicators. Believe me, universities and college professors would love to, or the multinational companies would love to hear those stories which we talk about in the report card. Let the 10th and 12th report card be as descriptive as the teachers can write. But the only problem comes with the language. Teacher training is so important. And technology comes, and technology will give you, okay, fine, click this, you don't have to worry about grammar and syntax.
Thank you, Neeta. Ajay, what is your take about from perspective of 2020 to 30? What advice would you like to give? Do you think you have also changed the report card in your school? Some addition in this? You're on mute. You're on mute.
Of course, the report card needs to now, have to have full shift. It should describe the child in totality, not in just a voluminous report of his abilities tested in an examination at the end of the year, right? It has to be a complete descriptor. If you look at admission processes in the US, they need a strong profile, not only the academic results. So that's what we're talking about, individual profile of the child. And that's where the reflections, self-learning, the peer learning, the peer assessment, the parent assessment, everything falls into place. Of course, the physical abilities, thinking styles, problem solving skills. Do you test it? There are situational tests. You can put them in situations and try and find out.
So have you
So there are
started
multiple ways
a bit of incorporating such things?
I've had 2 sessions in my school since I've joined in, and I've put in the idea of the implementation of this in terms of differences in, don't tell me that the child is weak in English. Tell me whether the child has a good vocabulary. Tell me whether the child is able to use grammar. Tell me whether the child is able to relate this and write a story. We have lost out the art of writing when a good essay. Today a child of class 12 also sadly cannot write an essay. So these are practical skills which we need to inculcate. Bring all the subjects.
Arijit, would you like to just state what is your take on 2020 to 30? How should NEP go for tech savvy? Like you're a technology savvy, so.
Yeah, I will talk using some tech language itself. So I think all of us need to change the lens through which we view assessments. So one of the core message of assessment data is measurement and its finality. So this finality concept is probably the weakest point of assessment. So I think it has to be continuous. It has to be viewed what ongoing process and not be regarded as a past tense. Because the moment you see assessment data in its final phase, finality, everything has already been done. So you cannot go back, science hasn't advanced so much that you take a time travel and go previously and rectify those mistakes. So I think the assessment data needs to be continuous and more behavioral in nature, so that it encompasses the pain points as it happens and takes care of individualized learning. And as I said, my last point is I would love to have not only students, but also mechanism to support teachers to become better in their job through meaningful assessments. Again, not testing, focus more on assessment and reflection.
Anit, what's your take? Like you said that we should highlight the other students also. So do you think you've started doing the, when we come to your school or with assessment, that do you highlight certain students, and what is the change you're seeing after NEP?
Yes, we are definitely trying on this. See, I'll tell you that it is we have given a very structured shape to assessment. Like the unit test when it started way back in 85, 86, 88, it like the concept behind that was it has to be a very spontaneous test where teacher and taught can decide when they need to be tested. So we should not have given any kind of deadline, dates, or a schedule to it. But what we have done, because of the parental pressure, we have created a schedule to it. This date, this unit test, this date, this unit test. Actually, the idea was that any day the teacher and taught can decide spontaneously and take up a small test, which can always help the child to understand how they need to improve. My take on assessment is that first thing, like it can happen in 10 years or 5 years, or as sir said, that it is only it is already there. It has to be flexible, it has to give freedom, and it has to be fear free. So 3F, if we need to incorporate into education, into assessment, that is, it needs to give all flexibility, it needs to give all freedom, and it has to be fear free kind of an assessment. If we are able to incorporate these three things, I think
Thank you
it is
so
going
much.
to sum up
Thank you,
everything.
Anit. So, Matt, do you think you'll be able to provide these 3Fs and many more with more acronyms where you feel that it will help all of us to do assessments with teacher training, as Neeta has written in a remark, that we not only have to focus on students, but the teachers as well as why teachers also. I'll say even our the employees who are working with as helpers, they also need now assessment. They also need to be tech savvy. So, do you think you can envisage this as future, and how can you? What do you want to say about that?
No second thoughts about it, that the future is obviously software based, or and software is the last thing in my opinion. It is more to do with the willingness to actually accept the software in the system, and software can be easily molded the way every institute wants. So I see that is the last glitch, and I personally feel that it will not be very far away. That lot of software will come for enabling the assessment to the educators. So it is not going to substitute for anything, but the software will be enabling tool to all the educators as to keep the entire life cycle, as I mentioned earlier, of any student as to how he is, rather than what are the scores which he is gaining. That is not the thing which I see it's going to work. But yeah,
Thank you so
software
much.
is easily
With
available.
that, we are coming to the end of this session. Thank you all our panelists. And where's my co-host gone? Rakhi, if you can enter. So thank you all for being with us. From Rakhi and Sapna, we EduStart and Teachers Help Teachers, we have taken this initiative of getting good minds together, like minds together, and discuss some important topics. So thank you all for being with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. And I'm sure that these insights are going to be much needed for the teaching community. And since we have a large teaching community, I will be sharing this with all our educators,
Many of them.
and we look forward to a lot more changes in our education system. Yeah.
One last point.
With people like you,
The
there were
selection
certain
of students who took part may have undone the country. Believe me, there are some schools here where whose children, if they had been selected for PISA testing, would have made country proud, because there are many schools where children are doing amazingly well. I wish. I mean, I talked to somebody in NCR. He said we took state schools. We took Himachal Pradesh because the state results was were around there. So it was not a sample of country. Please don't feel so low when they say India was last. I don't believe it. My children can never come last.
even I disagree
So
at times, Neeta, because when I
when
see
they
those
go
local
everywhere, they are
schools,
very
yes,
good. So let's not take that as a result, as a reflection
yeah,
on
that
our
point,
teaching
even
process.
because when you,
No way,
Neeta,
no
when you
way.
go to rural belt, you see such intelligent children.
But that is why you require that parak, where there is nationalized standardization of all schools, state or private. All schools have to do well. All children across their economic status or social status background should get good education. And PISA, they took only state schools. So please don't blame us. No, we good.
Okay.
Our children will do well. Next year they promised next PISA. They said they will take the best children.
No, we will create our own test and we will call others. So
No,
we will
I mean,
have
I told them, I said, bring the test to my children, I'll show you. They can do well.